Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today on something pretty close to home for a lot of people, the landlord-tenant relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, what happens when things go south?
Yeah.
We've got those problem Tenant Chronicles
Yeah,
excerpts.
they sound juicy.
They're ripped from the headlines.
I love it.
And before we jump in, I want to give a quick shout out to Flowers and Associates Property Rentals. I know a lot of you guys really loved our conversations with Robert Flowers,
Oh, yeah, he was great.
especially his perspective on creating those positive landlord-tenant relationships.
For sure.
His book, The Joy of Helping Others, Creating Passive Income Streams Through Special Needs Housing, is a fantastic resource. If you want to dive deeper into that, you can find it on Amazon and Audible. And if you're in the market for some reliable property management or rentals, you can reach Flowers and Associates at 901-445-8148 or visit flowersandassociatesbooking.com. They're a great example of a company that really understands how to take care of properties and tenants,
Yeah.
which is what today's all about. So the first scenario,
To me with it.
it's a doozy. It's called the arsonist tenant.
Oh, boy.
We're talking
Yeah.
frequent parties,
Oh.
ignoring warnings about open flames,
Yeah, yeah.
and then
What happens?
boom, a candle starts a fire.
Oh, no.
Rips through multiple units.
Oh, my God.
People are displaced.
Wow.
And of course, the tenant claims it was just an accident.
Of course.
So total disaster tenant not taking responsibility.
Yeah, what do you do? Like, what are the immediate steps a landlord should take?
Well, the Chronicles really emphasize a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, it's about safety and damage control.
Okay.
Emergency services securing the building, bringing in a professional restoration team to assess the damage.
Makes sense. And documentation is key here, right? I mean, like, every detail matters. Photos, fire department reports, witness testimonies, like, get it all.
Absolutely. All of that documentation is key for insurance claims and potentially for legal action down the line.
Right.
So speaking of legal action, how does a landlord even begin to hold a tenant accountable in a situation like this, especially if they are claiming it was an accident?
This is where the lease agreement becomes your best friend. You know, it's not just about the monthly rent. A well-drafted lease should cover a range of scenarios, including tenant liability for negligence.
So even if the lease doesn't explicitly say no accidental arson, there are clauses that address damage caused by the tenant's actions regardless of intent.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to have a lease that is thorough and specific, outlining things like prohibited activities, safety regulations, and the consequences of violations.
Right, we're talking detailed clauses about open flames parties, guest conduct.
The whole 9 yards.
So using those clauses, a landlord could deduct repair costs from the security deposit, or even seek further compensation if the damage exceeds the deposit amount.
Right.
But what if that's still not enough to cover the costs? Does it ever make sense to take legal action?
It depends on the situation. In cases of extensive damage where costs go beyond the security deposit and insurance coverage, a landlord might consider legal action to recoup those losses.
So we're talking lawsuits to recover costs for things like structural repairs, lost rental income while units are uninhabitable, even expenses incurred by displaced tenants.
Exactly. And that's where consulting with a lawyer who specializes in landlord-tenant law becomes crucial. They can assess the strength of your case, navigate the legal process, and advise on the best course of action. This is not a DIY situation.
Now, beyond the legal and financial aspects,
Okay.
there's also the human element to consider. A fire like this is traumatic and disrupts the whole community within a property.
Absolutely.
So how does a landlord begin to address that?
That's a really good point. The Chronicles actually highlight the importance of community restoration. It's not just about fixing the building, it's about supporting the people who have been affected.
Right.
So think about things like helping displaced tenants find temporary housing, providing clear communication about the repair timeline, offering any assistance or resources they might need.
So essentially going above and beyond just the legal obligations to rebuild trust and that sense of security.
Exactly. It's about showing genuine concern and proactive support. And that can make a huge difference in how the community recovers from such a traumatic event.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's interesting, these problem tenant chronicles highlight things that could happen to anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Like the second scenario here, it's called the absent communicator.
Okay.
And it's all about what happens when a landlord needs access to a unit for emergency repairs, but can't get a hold of the tenant.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Imagine like a major plumbing issue, water damage spreading,
Yeah.
and you're calling the tenant and it goes straight to voicemail.
Oh my God, that's my nightmare.
Days go by, other tenants start complaining. You're in this impossible situation.
That sounds stressful.
It's crazy. So let's say you're a landlord facing this communication black hole. What can you do?
Well, the Chronicles say a lot of it comes down to being proactive and like laying the groundwork early on.
Right.
Your lease agreement should define what an emergency is.
Right.
We're talking burst pipes, electrical hazards, anything that poses an immediate threat to the property or the residents.
Right. My internet's down is not an emergency.
Exactly.
There's water cascading through my ceiling. That's an emergency.
Exactly. And beyond just defining emergencies, the lease should outline communication protocols,
All right.
multiple contact methods for the tenant, designated emergency contacts, and a reasonable time frame for responding.
So it's all about eliminating that ambiguity so everyone's clear on what to do when something happens.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. Even with the best laid plans, sometimes you just can't get a hold of the tenant.
Right.
So what happens then?
Things get a little tricky. First, document everything. Leave a written notice on the tenant's door, clearly stating the emergency, the need for access, and all the attempts you've made to contact them.
So you have that paper trail showing you've acted responsibly.
Exactly.
But what if they still don't respond? You can't just let the situation escalate.
Right. In extreme cases, a landlord might have to exercise their legal right to enter the unit without the tenant's permission.
Okay, so now we're getting into some legal stuff.
Yeah, this is where understanding the local laws is so important.
Because I'm guessing barging into someone's apartment because you can't reach them is not okay.
Right.
Legally.
No, not at all. Most jurisdictions have laws regarding landlord entry, especially in emergencies. You've probably heard of the implied right of entry,
Yeah.
which basically means in certain situations, you can enter a property without notice to protect the property or the safety of the residents.
Okay, but even then, I'm guessing there are limits and procedures.
Absolutely. Like some states require that a landlord make reasonable attempts to contact the tenant before entering, while others might require you to file something with the court stating the nature of the emergency and like the attempts made to reach the tenant.
So it's not just a free-for-all. You have to know the law
Exactly.
and follow it very carefully.
Exactly.
Or you could end up in legal trouble yourself.
Yeah, definitely don't want that. That's why having legal counsel on these matters can be so helpful. They can advise you on the specifics in your area and help you navigate these tricky situations.
So even in an emergency, you need to document everything.
Yeah.
And act within the bounds of the law.
It's not worth taking chances with these things.
You're right. But even after the emergency is dealt with, you still have that communication breakdown to address. How do you prevent that from happening again?
Well, one strategy is to have a conversation with the tenant once they resurface. Reiterate the importance of communication,
Okay.
the potential consequences of being unreachable, and the need for reliable contact methods.
So going beyond just scolding them, are there things landlords can do to encourage better communication from the start?
Oh, for sure. The Chronicles mention some good ideas, like requiring tenants to list an emergency contact, someone who can be reached if the tenant isn't available.
Oh, that's a good idea. But beyond emergency contacts, what about just fostering better communication every day?
I think that's key. Building a positive rapport with tenants can go a long way in preventing these issues.
Oh.
Some landlords do periodic check-in calls just to see how things are going,
Oh, that's nice.
address any minor concerns before they blow up, keep those lines of communication open.
It's like proactive relationship management
Exactly.
instead of just reacting to crises.
It reminds me of Robert Flowers and his approach.
Yeah.
He really stresses treating tenants with respect, understanding their needs, being responsive.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that your tenants are people,
Right.
not just numbers on a spreadsheet.
They have lives and needs just like you.
Exactly. So going beyond that transactional landlord-tenant relationship
For sure.
and building something that's more positive and collaborative.
Sure.
These problem tenant chronicles are great because they highlight those challenges, but they also remind us that prevention and proactive communication are really important.
I agree. But even with our best efforts, sometimes these curveballs still come flying at us.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's shift gears and dive into the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we'll explore some broader takeaways from these landlord tales. Man, these problem tenant chronicles really take you on a ride.
Yeah, for sure.
All the ups and downs of being a landlord.
It's crazy.
You go from like fires to communication breakdowns.
Yeah.
It seems like there's always something.
Always a new challenge right around the corner.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder what it really takes to be a good landlord.
That's a good question. It's definitely more than just knowing the laws and having a solid lease.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Those are essential, but they're just the foundation. You need a lot more than that to be successful. You got to be good at communicating, empathizing, problem solving, even a bit of psychology, I think.
Oh, totally. It's like you're a detective,
Yeah.
a therapist, a
Yeah.
business manager, all in one.
Exactly.
You got to anticipate problems, understand people, and find solutions that work for everyone.
Yeah. And you can't forget about building relationships with your tenants.
Right.
It's not just about collecting rent. It's about creating a community and mutual respect.
And that makes me think back to Robert Flowers.
Oh, yeah.
He really hit on that human side of things.
Absolutely.
Going the extra mile to support your tenants, building that positive communication, and making sure everyone wins.
And clearly his approach works. I mean, Flowers and Associates has a great reputation.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're known for both property management and tenant satisfaction.
Right.
It shows that you can prioritize people and profits and still be successful.
For sure. Your tenants aren't just numbers in a spreadsheet.
No, they're not.
They're people with lives and needs.
Exactly.
So it's like you.
And understanding those needs and responding to their challenges, it makes all the difference.
It's all about building that trust, fostering open communication,
Yeah.
and creating a sense of partnership.
Exactly.
Instead of that like us versus them mentality.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
So if we were to sum up all these landlord lessons,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Okay, so first, proactive communication is essential. Outline your expectations in the lease. Establish good contact methods. And be responsive to your tenants' concerns.
Right. It's all about setting those clear expectations from day one.
Exactly.
And fostering open dialogue throughout the whole process.
Absolutely. Second, documentation is crucial. Document everything, whether it's the aftermath of a fire, maintenance requests, or just general communication with your tenants.
Right. That paper trail can save you a lot of headaches.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It protects everyone and prevents misunderstandings.
Exactly.
And finally, never underestimate empathy. These situations can be stressful for everyone, so approach them with understanding. Be willing to listen. And try to find solutions that work for all parties involved.
It's about remembering that behind every lease, there are real people.
Absolutely.
With real lives.
Yeah.
And treating those people with respect and fairness.
I love that.
That's what ultimately creates a successful landlord-tenant relationship.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what are you taking away from these Problem Tenant Chronicles? What resonates with you? What questions do you still have?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you're ever facing a tough situation, don't hesitate to reach out to resources like Flowers and Associates. Or consult with a legal professional in your area.
Yes, great advice.
Knowledge is power, and there's always help available.
Until next time, keep those questions coming and happy learning.